On the islands of the Pacific, a new kind of enemy emerged that would forever change how Japanese soldiers viewed combat. When American Marines first landed on Guadalcanal in August of 1942, they brought with them something the Imperial Japanese Army had never encountered before. These were not ordinary American soldiers. They were warriors trained with a ferocity that matched the Bushido code itself, yet backed by industrial might that Japan could never hope to match. Japanese intelligence officers had assumed that American forces were soft, bred from a democratic society that valued individual comfort over collective sacrifice. This assumption would prove catastrophically wrong within the first week of fighting. The Marines who came ashore numbered just over 16,000 men, but their impact on the battlefield was far greater than their numbers suggested. They fought with a determination that confused and terrified veteran Japanese commanders who had defeated Chinese forces 3 times their size. Officers who had studied American military doctrine found themselves facing something entirely unexpected. These Marines refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare that Japan understood. They adapted faster, fought harder, and most importantly, they never retreated regardless of circumstances. Every Japanese soldier who faced them wrote similar accounts in their final letters and diaries. They described an enemy that seemed inhuman in its relentless determination. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto crouched in his concrete bunker on Mount Suribashi and witnessed something that defied every military principle he had been taught. 6 American Marines stormed his position under intense machine gun fire. 3 fell immediately, but the others kept advancing as if possessed by forces beyond normal human understanding. When grenade barrages erupted all around them, one Marine threw himself on top of his comrades to shield them from the blast, then continued fighting despite catastrophic wounds until his body simply could no longer function. This level of sacrifice was not unique to this single incident. It happened repeatedly, systematically, and with such frequency that Japanese defenders began to question their own comprehension of warfare itself. The Marines did not fight like other soldiers. They did not attempt tactical retreats or reorganization under pressure. Instead, they advanced into the teeth of overwhelming fire with a kind of mechanical determination that seemed beyond rational military calculation. Japanese officers who studied captured Marine prisoners found their explanations equally bewildering. The Marines spoke of bonds between comrades that transcended individual survival. They claimed that surrendering would dishonor every Marine who had ever lived. To fail meant betraying brothers in arms across generations. This psychological conditioning was something the Imperial Army had no parallel for in their own training system. Corporal Hideo Takahashi wrote in his diary after the first week of fighting on Guadalcanal with a mixture of fear and incomprehension. The Americans who landed were different from any enemy Japan had faced. They did not retreat when surrounded. They did not surrender when their positions became hopeless. Most disturbing of all, they fought at night as if darkness gave them strength rather than inducing the fear that Japanese soldiers expected. Japanese military doctrine held that the night belonged to the Empire. Soldiers trained under Bushido principles understood that darkness offered superior defensive positions and opportunities for coordinating night attacks. The Marines seemed to have inverted this entire understanding of warfare. They conducted night patrols with precision and coordination that Japanese forces could not comprehend. Small units operated independently under their own commanders, making tactical decisions without waiting for orders from above. Artillery and machine gun fire coordinated in darkness with devastating accuracy. Japanese positions that seemed secure under darkness suddenly erupted in violence from multiple directions simultaneously. The psychological impact was devastating. Soldiers who had been trained to believe they controlled the night found themselves hunted by an enemy that seemed equally comfortable in darkness as in daylight. Intelligence reports distributed to garrison commanders acknowledged this shocking reality. Marine night operations employed small units moving through terrain that Japanese officers considered impenetrable. They killed in silence and disappeared before defenders could even organize a response. What Japanese military analysts struggled to understand was that marine combat operations represented something entirely new in warfare. This was not warfare as they had understood it through centuries of tradition and code. This was industrial destruction applied systematically to achieve objectives with brutal efficiency. Lieutenant Saburo Endo served as an artillery forward observer on Saipan and witnessed Marine combined arms tactics in their most complete form. His diary entries recorded meticulous observations of how Americans approached defense positions. Marines landed under covering fire from naval warships, but delivered continuous bombardment for 3 hours before the first landing craft even touched the beach. Aircraft bombed Japanese positions for 2 hours before landing. When Marines came ashore, every single movement was supported by tanks, artillery, naval gunfire, and airstrikes coordinating together. They advanced slowly and methodically, destroying everything in their path with calculated precision. When these carefully coordinated attacks encountered prepared Japanese positions, American commanders did not attempt clever tactics or surprise maneuvers. Instead, they called in battleship fire that literally erased hills from the landscape. This was not courage in any traditional sense. This was the methodical application of overwhelming force to eliminate resistance. Japanese soldiers equipped with rifles and light machine guns watched in horror as entire hillsides disappeared under naval gunfire. The shock was not just physical, but psychological. Japanese defenders realized they were facing not just an enemy military force, but an entire industrial nation's resources. Second Lieutenant Toshio Yamamoto conducted a nighttime infiltration patrol on Saipan 3 days after the American landing. He expected to find exactly what Japanese forces would have found after 3 days of intense combat on a contested beachhead. Exhausted troops with minimal supplies, struggling to maintain cohesion under pressure. Instead, what he discovered shocked him to his core. Marines were eating hot food prepared in mobile kitchens. Ammunition arrived by truck in quantities that seemed unlimited. Medical tents treated wounded soldiers with care and efficiency. Rest areas allowed units to rotate off the front lines for recovery. Supply dumps contained more ammunition than his entire regiment possessed. These were not just soldiers defending a position. They were soldiers living in conditions superior to peacetime garrison life while conducting the most intense battle of the Pacific War. This logistics demonstration proved something that Japanese commanders had hoped was not true. The Americans would never run out of food, ammunition, medicine, or replacement soldiers. Japan would. The relentless supply chain that supported Marine operations created a form of attrition warfare that mathematically favored the Americans despite their higher initial casualty rates. Japanese defenders fought from fixed positions with limited supplies and zero chance of reinforcement. Every casualty was permanent. Every round of ammunition expended was gone forever. Marines fought from an expanding beachhead with supplies arriving daily by ship and air. Casualties were evacuated to hospital ships, where modern medicine saved lives at unprecedented rates. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi prepared the defenses of Iwo in early 1945 with full understanding of the mathematical reality he faced. He wrote to his wife in January, 1 month before the invasion would come. The problem before him was mathematical with only one possible solution. 70,000 Marines would land with complete control of sea and air. They would bring unlimited ammunition and supplies. They would attack until the island fell. His mission was not to defeat them because that was impossible. His mission was to make them pay such a terrible price that Americans would reconsider invading the home islands themselves. Every day of resistance was valuable because it gave the Empire time to prepare defenses on the mainland. Every Marine killed represented one less enemy in the final battle for Japan's survival. This evolution of Japanese defensive strategy reflected complete abandonment of hopes for actual victory. By mid-1944, Intelligence summaries distributed to garrison commanders acknowledged what could no longer be denied. Marines could not be stopped, only delayed. Documents captured on Tinian provided guidance that revealed this grim acceptance. Do not expect to hold positions indefinitely, the orders read. The objective is to delay the American advance to enable other strategic objectives. Each day of resistance is valuable. Each Marine killed is valuable. But understand that the position will fall. The Marine divisions that landed across the Pacific were not staffed with the most experienced officers or eldest soldiers. Many junior leaders were in their early 20s, yet they possessed an authority and decision-making capability that astonished Japanese observers. Sergeants made tactical decisions that Japanese military doctrine reserved exclusively for captains. Corporals led assaults that required a lieutenant's authority in the Imperial Japanese Army. The result was an enemy force that adapted faster than Japanese commanders could react to changing circumstances. When a bunker stopped a Marine advance, a sergeant would immediately identify alternative approaches and redirect the attack through unexpected angles while calling in supporting fire. All of this happened without waiting for orders from command staff above. Japanese defenders found themselves constantly fighting enemies who appeared in unexpected directions because the Marines had identified and exploited weaknesses before Japanese commanders even recognized those weaknesses existed. This delegation of authority throughout the organization created what might be called a distributed intelligence system. Young men who in Japanese forces would have been required to await orders instead became tactical thinkers who solved combat problems in real time. The result was an enemy that learned from each engagement and improved with experience. Japanese defenders faced Marines who became more effective as battles progressed. On the night of October 24th, 1944, Colonel Takuya Takasha led approximately 3,000 Japanese soldiers in what was intended to be a decisive banzai charge against American positions on Saipan. Japanese doctrine held that such an assault, conducted with absolute commitment, would shatter any defense through sheer ferocity and the defender's fear of being overrun. The Marines of the 27th Infantry Division were mostly sleeping when the charge began at 0300 hours. Japanese soldiers poured into the Marine lines screaming, bayonets fixed, overwhelming forward positions through sheer numerical force. Traditional military doctrine called for a fighting retreat to reorganize and regroup. The Marines did something entirely different. Officers and sergeants organized desperate defensive stands at key positions using every weapon available. Artillery fired at point-blank range. Marines engaged in hand-to-hand combat with trench knives. The fighting lasted 4 hours. When dawn broke, Japanese bodies covered an area 500 meters deep. American casualties numbered 90 killed and 247 wounded. 3,000 Japanese soldiers died. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida survived the charge with severe wounds and later explained the shock through interrogation. Marines were supposed to fear close combat and rely on firepower out of cowardice. Instead, Marines fought hand-to-hand and defeated the assault completely. The most feared Marine weapon was not rifles or artillery. It was the flamethrower. Japanese soldiers trained to accept death in battle, as Glorious understood that flamethrowers offered no honorable death. Corporal Hideo Takahashi was captured on Okinawa with burns covering 40% of his body. He described the psychological impact of this weapon to interrogators. Soldiers were taught to accept death by bullets, bayonets, artillery as warrior deaths, he explained. Fire was something different entirely. You watch flames approach your position. You smell comrades burning alive. You hear the screaming. There is no glory in this death. It is industrial slaughter. This is what the Marines understood that we did not. Modern war has no place for honor or glory. It is about killing the enemy as efficiently as possible using the best tools available. This realization came too late for most Japanese defenders. By 1944, Every Japanese soldier in the Pacific knew that facing Marines meant facing the most lethal combination of training, equipment, and doctrine that America possessed. On February 19th, 1945, 3 Marine divisions numbering 70,000 men landed on Iwo Jima. General Kuribayashi's defenses worked exactly as planned. Naval bombardment barely scratched the fortifications built deep into volcanic rock. Marines landed in neat waves and immediately took catastrophic casualties. Within minutes, the black volcanic sand was covered with dead and wounded. Japanese artillery observers called down perfectly coordinated fire on landing beaches. The assault seemed to be failing. Then something happened that would repeat across the Pacific. The Marines did not withdraw to regroup. They advanced into the artillery fire. They found gaps between Japanese positions and exploited them. When bunkers stopped the advance, demolition teams crawled forward under fire to destroy them. When those teams died, other Marines took their place. The attack never stopped. Private Tadashi Yamamoto watched from his bunker as Marines assaulted positions nearby. His diary recorded incomprehension. A Marine flamethrower operator approached. The Japanese killed him. His assistant picked up the weapon and continued. They killed the assistant. A 3rd Marine took it. They wounded him severely. He continued firing until the weapon was empty, then threw grenades into firing ports until they killed him. By then, demolition engineers had reached the bunker entrance. The position was lost. This scenario happened 30 times in the first hour alone. Japanese military officers who interrogated captured Marines struggled to understand the training system that created such soldiers. Boot camp lasted 8 weeks, a prisoner explained. For the first 4 weeks, drill instructors destroy everything civilian in the recruit. You are told you are worthless, that you will never be a Marine, that you should quit and join the Army. The abuse is psychological and physical. You are pushed until you think you cannot continue, then pushed further. Those who quit are publicly shamed. Those who remain learn that surrender is not an option. A Japanese officer taking notes acknowledged this resembled their own training, but seemed more systematic. Then came a revelation that shocked Japanese intelligence officers. The second 4 weeks, instructors build you into a Marine, the prisoner continued. You learn that you are part of something greater than yourself. Every Marine who ever lived is your brother. This created something unique in the world. Marines fought not just to survive, or even to win. They fought because to fail was to betray every Marine who had lived before them. Intelligence reports captured on Tinian in July 1944 provided detailed guidance to Japanese forces on defending against Marine assaults. The reports acknowledged several facts that contradicted years of Japanese propaganda. Marines were physically larger and stronger than Japanese soldiers on average due to superior nutrition since childhood. They received more ammunition, better weapons, and more reliable equipment than Imperial Japanese Army troops. Marine training emphasized marksmanship to a degree unmatched by Japanese forces. The average Marine rifleman could hit targets at ranges where Japanese soldiers could not even see clearly. Marines operated with air and naval support that Japanese forces could not match or counter. Most critically, Marines were trained to believe that surrender was unacceptable. They would fight to death or victory with no third option available. The report provided tactical guidance that revealed complete collapse of Japanese confidence. Do not expect them to retreat, the order stated. Do not assume casualties will degrade their morale. Do not believe that superiority in numbers provides advantage as their firepower negates numerical superiority. Do not attempt banzai charges as Marines will slaughter charging troops with automatic weapons and artillery. Do not expect them to fear nighttime attacks as they fight effectively in darkness. American efficiency extended to every aspect of Marine operations in ways that Japanese forces could never replicate. Wounded Marines received medical treatment within minutes of being hit. Casualty evacuation by air and sea moved wounded men from battlefield to hospital ship in hours. Blood plasma, antibiotics, and surgical care saved lives at rates unprecedented in military history. Japanese wounded often died from lack of medical supplies or infected wounds. Injuries that American medicine routinely treated and survived proved fatal for Japanese soldiers. Captured Japanese soldiers watched Marines who should have died from wounds instead survive to fight again. Intelligence reports noted that Marine divisions suffered 75% casualties on Peleu in September 1944, then returned to full strength within 3 months. Those replacements landed on Iwo Jima in February and fought with the same effectiveness as veterans. This ability to regenerate defeated units was completely beyond Japanese capability. The Imperial Japanese Army had no comparable training system, no replacement pipeline that could maintain unit quality while absorbing catastrophic losses. By 1944, Japanese soldiers received intelligence reports describing Marines with a mixture of respect and dread that bordered almost on superstition. One captured document provided detailed analysis that contradicted official propaganda distributed to troops. Marines are the most effective fighting force in the Pacific, the report stated. They possess attributes that make them uniquely dangerous. Their training creates soldiers willing to accept casualties that would break other military units completely. Their firepower exceeds ours by factors of 5 to 1 in artillery and 10 to 1 in air support. Their junior leaders make decisions at squad level that our officers make at company level, allowing them to exploit opportunities faster than we can react. Most critical of all, they never stop attacking. There is no defense that can survive this combination indefinitely. This final point terrified Japanese defenders across the Pacific more than any other factor. Soldiers could accept defeat in battle. They could understand being outgunned or outmaneuvered through clever tactics. What they could not comprehend was an enemy that simply would not stop regardless of losses. The brutal arithmetic of Iwo Jima demonstrated Marine doctrine in its purest form. 70,000 Marines landed. 26,000 became casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed. But all 21,000 Japanese defenders died, except for 16 who were captured, most because they were unconscious or too wounded to resist. The Marines paid an almost unimaginable price, but they took every objective completely. The position delayed Marine advance by exactly 40 minutes before being bypassed by other units that continued advancing while combat engineers reduced the bunker. This pattern repeated across Iwo Jima thousands of times. Japanese defenders fought with desperate courage, inflicting terrible casualties, yet achieved nothing except their own deaths. The campaign ended on March 26th. The statistics told the story clearly. Any other military force would have required months to recover from such casualties. 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions were back in action within 6 weeks. This ability to absorb casualties and continue fighting became the defining characteristic that most terrified Japanese defenders. Corporal Kenji Matsumoto survived 4 months on Guadalcanal before evacuation and wrote a letter intercepted by American intelligence. We were taught that Americans are individualistic, that they will not sacrifice for their comrades. This is false. I watched a Marine machine gunner continue firing with both legs shattered until Japanese infantry killed him at close range. His assistant immediately took the weapon and continued firing. We lost 40 men to that position. After his capture on Okinawa, Matsumoto explained in a 1946 interview what Japanese soldiers felt facing Marines. The worst part was knowing they would never stop. You could kill half a Marine unit, and the survivors would continue attacking. You could wound their leaders and sergeants would take command. You could fight them to exhaustion, and they would attack again the next day. There was no way to win. You could only kill them until they killed you. That is not war. That is mutual annihilation. And the Marines had more men than we did. General Kuribayashi understood that defending Iwo Jima would be mathematically impossible. His strategy reflected evolution of Japanese defensive doctrine, from confident aggression to desperate attrition. He banned the banzai charges that had wasted Japanese lives in previous battles. Instead, he created a defense in depth that channeled Marines into killing zones covered by multiple bunkers. Artillery was positioned to deliver devastating fire on landing beaches. 11 miles of tunnels connected 1,500 cave positions. Every approach was registered for mortar and artillery fire. The beach was designed as a death trap. Before the battle began, Kuribayashi wrote orders acknowledging what official propaganda denied. We cannot win this battle. We can only make the Americans bleed for every meter of ground. That is our mission. Accept death. Inflict casualties. Delay their advance. This is how we serve the empire in its darkest hour. Yet the strategy failed because it misunderstood fundamental aspects of Marine culture and psychology. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto wrote his final diary entry the night before his bunker would be destroyed by Marine demolition teams. Tomorrow, the Marines will reach this position. We have killed hundreds of them in the past 3 weeks. More arrive every day. They do not weaken. They do not slow down. They do not stop. I thought our spirit was stronger than American materialism. I was wrong. The Marines have both spirit and material. They have courage equal to ours, combined with weapons and supplies we cannot match. They are what we claim to be. We are what we claimed they were. This is the truth we die knowing. His bunker was destroyed the next morning after a 6-hour battle that killed all 11 defenders and wounded 3 Marines. The position delayed the Marine advance by exactly 40 minutes before being bypassed by other units. His diary was recovered by Marines and forwarded to intelligence officers who translated it and filed it among thousands of similar documents. The words captured a truth that Japanese soldiers across the Pacific had learned through brutal experience. Fighting the Marines was not like fighting other American forces, or British, or Chinese, or any other enemy. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida was repatriated in 1946 after recovering from wounds received on Saipan. He described his return home with revelation that destroyed remaining faith in the empire. Everything we were told was lies, he explained. The Marines did not torture prisoners. They provided food, medical care, shelter. They treated us better than our own officers had. The Americans were not barbarians. We were the barbarians. This knowledge was devastating to soldiers who had been indoctrinated to view Americans with hatred. Thousands of former Japanese soldiers reached similar conclusions after the war ended. Post-war interrogation reports revealed common themes throughout: respect for Marine fighting qualities, bitterness toward Japanese leadership that had lied about American capabilities, recognition that the war had been hopeless from the start because Japan could not match American industrial capacity or the fighting quality of troops like the Marines. The Marines proved themselves worthy of the fear they inspired among Japanese defenders. They were the tip of the spear that broke Japanese defensive lines across the Pacific. They paid a terrible price with casualty rates that would have destroyed lesser organizations. But they never broke, never retreated, never surrendered an objective. They were exactly what Japanese propaganda had claimed the Imperial Japanese Army was: invincible warriors who would fight to death before accepting defeat. The final irony was that Marines achieved this through systematic training and overwhelming material support, not through mystical warrior spirit or racial superiority. They proved that modern warfare required both courage and industrial capacity, both training and technology, both individual sacrifice and national resources. Japanese veterans like Corporal Hideo Takahashi, interviewed decades after the war ended, understood this completely. We were taught that spirit conquers material, he said. The Marines taught us that spirit plus material conquers spirit alone. They were as willing to die as we were. But they had Sherman tanks and naval gunfire, and unlimited ammunition and air supremacy, and medical care and food, and all the resources of America behind them. We had our rifles and our courage and promises of victory. That was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Marines proved this on every island they took across the Pacific.